How are we all on Monday, the 8th of August? Oh, backstretch. Hope everyone had a nice weekend. But here we are, Monday morning, and there was a meeting last week that came up in my notifications in YouTube because I am subscribed to Norfolk County Council on their YouTube channel where they go live, and I wasn't able to that morning, and I put it on my list and thought when I have 5 minutes I will sit down, well, when I have at least an hour, because I think the meeting went on for over 2 hours. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous, really. So I thought we could have a little listen together. Don't have to, but let's see what they've got to say. So it's Norfolk Health and Wellbeing Board for Norfolk and Waveney Integrated Care Partnership. This was on the 3rd of September, so that was last week, wasn't it?
Sorry, a few minutes late. I know a lot of people have been held up in
There
traffic,
we go.
So they will be joining us soon, I'm sure. But welcome everyone that's here today. Obviously, I hope you all, or a number of you, enjoyed your tea or coffee beforehand, and we will have a break between the Health and Wellbeing Board and the ICP. So we can have another drink and chat then. Okay, lovely, thank you. The fire alarm test is expected, which you've just heard, but if it goes again, we will need to evacuate County Hall. And in that event, we need to go to the nearest exit and meet at the muster point, located on the main car park by the plane. So basically out of here. Okay, thank you. This meeting is being live streamed, and so it will be on the Council's YouTube channel. And the recording will be available to view on that channel afterwards. There we go. We are requested to wear our badges at all time for security. I must apologise for our contributions and welcome.
Maybe I'm muted now. That makes sense. I'll get there at some point. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunate, but we'll have to rectify that for the future so people aren't blocked from coming in. And when you use your microphone, please make sure it's switched on and speak towards it. And this will let the camera know that you're speaking, and the cameras will then focus on you, okay, for the live stream. If you keep your mic about 6 inches away, it will avoid any feedback. And when you finish speaking, please push the button to turn it off, which will allow the system to pick up the next speaker. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, so I'll pass over to Nikki for apologies. Thank you.
In other words, who isn't there?
Apologies today received from Ian Wake, substituted by Nicholas Clinch, Will Pope, Councillor Penny Carpenter, Alex Stewart, Sarah Taylor and her substitute Gavin Thompson, Dr. Charlotte Florence and her substitute Heather Farley, David Beavan, Chris Farmer, Daniel Childerhouse, Ian Hutchinson, substituted by Adele Madden, Councillor Liz Withington, Councillor Natasha Harpley, substituted by Councillor Eleanor Lammin, and Anna Gill, substituted by Steve Bush.
That's quite a lot, isn't it? Considering the importance of this meeting.
We move on to the minutes of the meeting from 11th of June. That would have been the Health and Wellbeing Board and ICP minutes together.
Within the
so
meeting.
Are we all happy with the minutes? Is there anything we're not content with? I see no discontent, so we'll sign them. I'll sign them off in a bit. Thank you. Okay.
Minutes.
And the next item is to declare any items of interest. Have you got any interest to declare? No? Excellent. Thank you. Excuse me. So this is an update from myself. I just wanted to thank Ian Hutchinson for his contributions and welcome Adele Maddin, I see there in the front row, so welcome. And also I'd like to thank Maisie Coleman. Many of you may have seen her over the last few, months and years perhaps, for her contributions as a previous committee officer, and welcome Nikki into the new position. So thank you. As I said, we have got some new members. As I said, Adele is a new member here today, which is fantastic for the East Coast Community Healthcare. And also Carl Hampshire-Smith from the East of England Ambulance Service over there. Lovely. Welcome, Carl. As I say, I'm sure many of you have met before, but as I say, we will have a break, so if you want to mingle and have a chat, that's fine. Thank you. The agenda may look slightly different to you. It's been changed due to Democratic Services updating all the committee agendas to ensure they meet accessibility standards. So hopefully, for some of you, that will make it easier. Okay. And also from Suffolk and North East Essex, we're joined today by Susanna Howard, which is over there. Thank you. Welcome, Susanna. It's lovely to see you. And she's been invited along because obviously we will be working closer together. So, and in the future, I'll also be attending some Suffolk and North East Essex meetings too. So I think it's really important for us to get to understand one another. And as we move closer to a merger of Norfolk and Suffolk ICB, we will be in that position in the near future. The Integrated Care System Conference, just a reminder, the ICS conference is coming up. You should have all had received a save the date for the 12th of November. Formal invites will be coming out in the next few weeks, so I'd encourage your attendance there. Okay. We have got an update from Ed Garrett, but he's not here yet, so we can wait and we'll get that later. That's okay. Public questions. There were some public questions, one question and a supplementary, which responses have been sent, and the person's not here, so that's fine. We have got a slight change in the agenda items, just because, say, Ed Garrett is stuck in traffic, so he will be here. So we've shifted the first item, item 6, which is page 15, and we'll visit that shortly, hopefully when Ed's with us. Okay, so if we start on item 7, which is the page 37 in your agenda, and that's a Norfolk Health Protection Assurance Board annual report. So, no, sorry, I've got that wrong, haven't I? Which one? We're going to, no, sorry, excuse me, sorry, Abby's looking at me there. Sorry, I've got the wrong one. It's the Norfolk Safeguarding Children Partnership annual report, which is on page 106. And the lead is Sarah Tuff. So, Sarah, I don't know if you want to introduce this, and then we'll hand over to Abigail McGarry, who's the head of Norfolk Safeguarding Children's Partnership, and Jeremy Bone. Okay?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Well, it's the time of year when we bring the Children's Safeguarding Annual Report to the Health and Wellbeing Board. Every year seems to get faster. It doesn't feel 5 minutes since we last discussed the previous one. You've got the full report in your pack. It's very comprehensive and lots of detail, so I'm not going to take you through that. And although I think the summary explains the purpose of why the report is here. You also have, and I hope you've all quickly seen it and looked at it, the Children and Young Persons version of the annual report. And I would suggest that's the better one to read. It's certainly the easier one to read. Very honest in terms of the views of children and young people. I'm the chair of our multi-agency safeguarding arrangements. I'm very pleased to perform that role, and on that basis I'm going to, and what I'm going to do now is actually hand over to Abigail and Jeremy, who support the work that we do as statutory partners, and they will take you through some of the highlights and will create an opportunity for people to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to use the next sort of 5-10 minutes just to give you a bit of an overview of the report before I hand over to Jeremy to talk to you about our data, because he's our senior analyst and I know people really like that section. And as Sarah already alluded to, you have a copy of the Children and Young People's Annual Report, which I have to say is one of the highlights of my year going into production, working collaboratively with them. So not only do I get to have that retrospective on the work we've done and celebrate some of our achievements, we can share those directly with those children and young people, and then they can provide back any challenges or gaps that they pick up on. So I'll just quickly give you an overview, chapter by chapter.
Before we go on, I have just looked up what this lady was then saying. And I have got to this page. Sorry, wrong page. So I just looked up the Health and Wellbeing Board on the it's the 3rd of December. That's probably why. So where is... You see, I went on meetings and dates. Okay, just bear with me because I'm still trying to find this agenda. Clearly not very well, because they haven't put anything on the YouTube channel of the agendas or the past agenda.
The governance chapter sets out all that we do to make sure that we are compliant with our statutory guidance working together, published 2023. As Sarah said, it names our delegated safeguarding partners and Sarah as the chair of our multi-agency safeguarding arrangements. This year, we have made significant progress in including education as our 4th statutory partner. Now, it's a big ask because education is not a coherent body or organization. We have over 450 now schools, I think, but we have actually managed to achieve representation from primary schools, secondary schools, special schools, and higher education. And they are all playing an active role now in the partnership group, in setting priorities, in updating all partners on the safeguarding agenda in schools. It also, the governance recognizes and names our scrutineers and that statutory function of providing scrutiny of our safeguarding arrangements. It names all our safeguarding groups, partnership group, and our statutory subgroups for safeguarding practice reviews and child death overview, as well as our joint strategic analysis group and multi-agency audits. We have several times a year leadership exchange and learning events, which is an opportunity to bring the wider partnership together to look at some wicked issues or just take the temperature of the system. Those are very well attended, and we get very positive feedback. And of course, all of this work is directed by the delegated safeguarding partners, but I have a very well-established and highly functioning business unit that helps us to support them in that work. We've added this year a page on year at a glance, so kind of going month by month to sort of see the highlights, draw out the highlights, and how we use our time and make sure that every month we've achieved something that we can be proud of. There's a chapter on the voice of the child. I think if those of you who were here last year will know that we achieved a quality mark from a panel of children and young people for the work that we've done. And we continue to engage directly with children and young people where we can, bearing in mind we're strategic and back office, but we are committed to hearing their voices. So some examples this year is that we had some focus groups for the scrutiny that we did on transitional safeguarding with young offenders, young carers, older young people with special needs, and looked after children care leavers. We also included them in some consultation we did around a piece of communication for one of our priorities, and we were very involved with the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner's production of Know the Signs exploitation video. And that particular group of young people were nominated and won a Flourish Award for that piece of work, and went on to do some additional work for me, which I'll come back
Got funny earrings, hasn't she?
The data chapter, I'm going to defer to
Oh,
Jeremy.
loopy.
We had a standalone chapter this year on inspection because of some quite significant activity in inspection. There was some single agency inspections from probation, police, their appeal inspection, and the Youth Justice Board, which we paid close attention to draw any implications for keeping children safe. But the highlight of our year was the Joint Targeted Area Inspection, which happened last December, and the report was published in February. I think that it was
Comments are
overall
turned
very
off, look.
positive experience, exhausting from memory, but what it showed is the strength of the partnership and how we all were brought together and worked collaboratively to really showcase what we do well and own those areas of development. And just, I don't want to sound smug, just as an indicator, some of the other local areas who had these types of inspections had 10 recommendations. We had 5 recommendations, all of which are in an action plan and we're working on at the moment. There's a chapter on scrutiny which describes the work of our independent scrutineers. They did completed 3 pieces of scrutiny over this last year: transitional safeguarding, as I mentioned before, and the front door. So how good are we and confident are we that we are accurately assessing risk at the front door. They did complete a piece of work on children missing out on education, which was a pretty broad subject, so something of a slippery fish to grasp, but we haven't actually got that signed off, and some of those recommendations will be actioned in this financial year, so you'll hear more about that next year. We talked about our multi-agency audits, so we did a couple on the neglect graded care profile, and in preparation for that joint targeted area inspection, we also used that framework to sense check how good we are at protecting children unborn to 7 years old against domestic abuse and the impact that has on them. The scrutiny also references the work that we do to monitor recommendations from across the system, which we pull together into a composite action plan, as well as our Section 11 safeguarding self-assessment, which single agency.
So they want to use that framework to check how good we are at protecting children unborn to 7 years old. How have you been getting on? Where would we find this? Where would we find this information?
Complete to give us a bigger picture. Very mature, nuanced process where we're not focusing on the standard, do you have a safeguarding policy, but actually trying to get under the skin with individual agencies about what they're doing to support the NSCP to promote our priorities and learn and work together. There's a chapter on priorities. So in this financial year, we continue to focus on neglect, vulnerable adolescents, exploitation, and family and community network. This chapter summarizes all the achievements and the links to Section 11. Just as a side note, and to manage your expectations for next year, we outside of the time period of this report, we had a priority review session, and some of those priorities are changing. We're stepping neglect down based on the work that's been completed, and we've got some systems in place to ensure that we continue to monitor and quality assure the work we do around neglect. We are maintaining vulnerable adolescents as a priority. We are moving family and community networking to Family First Partnership Board, and we're also looking at child sexual abuse. But those are all spoiler alerts for next year. The chapter also talks about some of our innovations and projects. The two that
Really?
I'm most particularly proud of is the development of our joint agency group supervision. This came into play some 5 years ago, but there were some issues with the way we did it. So we've now developed a quality assurance and monitoring system that we can really ensure reflects the support that we provide and the reflective spaces we give to our frontline practitioners doing that really difficult, emotionally impactful safeguarding work. And the last one was around the multi-agency chronologies, which we have developed, led by Children's Services, independent services, initially in the space of child protection conferences, so we can see the level of harm over time. But there is intention to roll that out to all stages of the child's journey, I think imminently about to be progressed. Nearly there. Safeguarding practice reviews. There were two significant publications this year. In August, oh no, that was last year. In August, yeah, it was this in financial year. In August 2024, it was a non-statutory review on serious youth violence known as Delta, about a young man who was stabbed to death shortly after his 18th birthday. The statutory guidance puts a limitation on us to do for children, to review children cases, but the learning was significant, and we were being transparent and proactive, so we went ahead and did that as a review, and we're working on the action plans. The vulnerable adolescent groups taken the recommendations from that report into their action plan. The second one was the Isabella Wilden case, which was actually published by Central Bedfordshire Local Safeguarding Children Partnership. Isabella was a child who travelled from Central Beds through Norfolk to Suffolk, where she was tragically killed, and her parents have subsequently been sentenced for her homicide.
Murder.
But we played an active part in that, and it was agreed jointly with Suffolk and Central Beds that we would all publish the report and take joint ownership of the learning. Locally, we've completed another case AM, which focuses on fabricated or induced illness. Due to parallel criminal proceedings, while we've completed the process, we can't publish it, but we are taking the learning forward in the interim period.
Why can't you publish it?
And the report also includes all the other activity we've had around rapid reviews and any cases we've been
Just
involved
explain
in.
what it is.
I just want to add a small commendment to the children and young people. We did have to talk to them about the contents of this chapter, and they were incredibly brave, resilient, and insightful about this. And their real question was, why do people do this to children? So we had a long and very sensitive and thought-provoking conversation about trauma, human nature, and how the system does everything in its power to identify and prevent this from happening early. Workforce development covers training, practice week, recruitment and retention, and as well as the support and coordination it provides for best practice events and conferences. We had 2 significant conferences on serious youth violence and father-inclusive practice in that time frame. There's a chapter on funding. And finally, there's a conclusion where we set out our next steps, bearing in mind that we are going through a period locally, nationally, globally of some turbulence and change. So just within England, we've got safeguarding reform, we've got devolution, there's changes to health and the ICB, as well as managing all the pressures of social unrest.
So let's just do it all at the same time rather than sort one
cost
out
of
and then
living
move on to
crises,
the next.
and just interagency, single agency finances, inspections, and so on and so forth. But we have, I'm pleased to report, I think, an extremely strong, mature, nuanced partnership with very, very strong and powerful leadership, with the commitment from our 3 delegated safeguarding partners to keep this show on the road and keep children safe. I'm going to pass to Jeremy, and then he can talk to you about the data.
Okay, so the section on data, aims to give a sort of flavour, I guess, of the scale and the nature of the activity undertaken within the partnership. So it covers 3 broad areas. The first one we're not going to talk to hugely here, but is about how we use data as a partnership, how we bring data together, mainly statutory partners, share that safely and ensure that we're able to make informed choices in terms of our strategies and those kind of things. So we'll park that one for today. The other 2 bits are to provide scale to our activity and to understand the backdrop to children's outcomes. So we'll talk about that in slightly more detail. But then 3, to highlight some of the key themes and findings from our data this year. So I'm just going to go through those last 2 bits. So in terms of describing the scale of the NSCP's activity and its partners, crucially its partners' activity, we review that in the report in terms of a week in the life, to give a bit of scale to that and to give a bit of a real world sense of how much activity goes on. And within the context of that, we show that, for example, in each week there are around 150 babies born in Norfolk within the context of about 189,000 children and young people aged 0 to 19 and about 125,000 who are in our school population.
Hang on. So there's 150 babies born in Norfolk within the context of 189,000 children. Okay.
About 1,000 A&E attendances for people of a child age, including 370 for under 4s. There's about 100 domestic abuse investigations that are started where a child is present. There are about 10 stop and searches of children. There are about 20 arrests of children, thinking about the criminal justice side of things. There are also about 950 contacts made to our Children's Advice and Duty Service, which is, I guess, the front door that Abigail was talking about earlier, where most of our formal safeguarding proceedings start. So within that 950, that includes 265 from schools and education services, about 190 from the police, about 160 from members of the public, and about 115 from health services. So that is every week. It then highlights how that stacks up in terms of at any given time, we might have around about 440 children with a child protection plan, about 1,115 looked after children, which includes a significant proportion, about 140, also unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and about 145 children and young people receiving youth justice services intervention. So all of that gives a scale, I guess, to the huge amount of work that goes on within the partnership and within the agencies that make it up. And then finally, in terms of the themes within the data, and particularly this year's data, the report covers 2 main areas. One is, I guess, big volumes in terms of our key pathways and changes in those, and then the results of our Flourish survey, which I think you're familiar with, so from previous presentations. Okay, so in reviewing our volumes overall from last year, the report focused on some key long-term trends that are continuing. So it shows reductions in the rate of children with child protection plans and who are looked after, and then alongside that, increases in volumes of what we might describe as early help and prevention activity, more upstream activity. And it reflects that there's some likely trade-off between those things. You know, we're trying to prevent problems from occurring and for problems and contexts to be, become very complicated for children and young people. As a result of that, we have seen some reduction in some of the children and young people in those the more complex end of our safeguarding pathway, so child protection plans and looked after children. That trade-off is a very big simplification of what is a very complicated picture. It's not as simple as that, but within the report we acknowledge that, and we don't go into too much more detail, but that is one of the overarching findings. In addition to that, we show long-term reductions in recorded crimes by and against children and in first-time entrance to the youth justice system, which, whilst going up in the last year, comes within generally what we might expect to be normal variation, and actually there is a long-term trend. And again, that reflects efforts and trends within that side of things in terms of the police and the criminal justice side of things to avoid formal criminal proceedings for children and young people where possible, but also to have preventative interventions. And then finally, it highlights continuing increases in demand for mental health services, which as a contextual factor for safeguarding is really important. We know there's a strong association with both parental and child mental health and poor safeguarding outcomes. Finally, the data chapter looks at key findings from the Flourish survey. As I believe you've seen that, but some of the highlights that particularly relate to safeguarding and particularly relate to work of the NSCP include an increasing proportion of pupils experiencing online risks, which won't be a surprise, I'm sure. But notable rises in online.
Has anybody watched the Netflix it's a catfishing, it's a documentary thing about this American girl and her boyfriend. It went on for 18 months and the FBI had to get involved. Crazy.
Online bullying.
Especially when you find out at the end who it was. Crazy.
The proportion of respondents to the survey who stated they see sexually explicit media, and also, perhaps unexpectedly, and not something we look at often, an increase in those placing online bets. There's been a slight increase in those reporting they've been bullied overall. That may relate to that online bullying, but it's not as significant as an increase as that. Most children and young people who responded feel safe in their area at night, so about 80% say they feel safe at night, but less than half, so around 44%, feel that way at night, so happier during the day, not so much at night. And then finally, 9 in 10 respondents rate the...
Isn't that why we need completely. Isn't that why we need youth groups in the evening then?
Continuing increases in demand for mental health services, which as a contextual factor for safeguarding is really...
Sorry, I've gone back wrong.
We know there's a strong association with both parental and child mental health and poor safeguarding outcomes. Finally, the data chapter...
Because I thought that's what the Phoenix group was about. Wasn't the Phoenix group going to be a youth group?
Relate to work at the NSCP.
Coffee shop at the moment, isn't it?
An increasing proportion of pupils experiencing online risks, which won't be a surprise, I'm sure. But notable rises in online bullying. The proportion of respondents to the survey who stated they see sexually explicit media, and also, perhaps unexpectedly, and not something we look at often, an increase in those placing online bets. There's been a slight increase in those...
I've gone back too far, really, haven't I?
Overall, that may relate to that online...
Yeah, thanks. So
within the report, we acknowledge that, and we don't go into too much more detail, but that is one of the overarching findings. In addition to that, we show long-term reduction...
Can't find it now.
Media.
So I wanted to clarify that, because that's a slight...
yeah, thanks.
Let's just carry on with that.
Sarah.
Margaret.
Thank you. I just thought I'd make a clarification for colleagues in the room. So in the past...
I wonder if that other bloke turned up yet from his traffic jam.
Chair, our adult colleagues still have an independent chair, but the working together guidance that sets out the duties and responsibilities of the Safeguarding Partnership made it very clear in 2023 that for children we should no longer have an independent chair, and that the arrangements for multi-agency safeguarding would be chaired by the statutory partners, and we will do that on a rotation. I'm currently doing that at the moment. But we felt, as a multi-agency safeguarding set of partners, having independence in our system added huge value. So we've committed to and invested in scrutineers, and that reference was made then to a lead scrutineer, which is Chris Robson, who then plays an active role in holding us as statutory partners to account through the scrutiny work that he is commissioned to undertake. So I want to clarify that, because that's a slight nuance.
Really? You could have it for free from me, look. Bloody hell, somebody get paid for doing that?
In terms of what you would have previously understood and how you will see that through the adult safeguarding arrangements.
Thanks, Sarah, for that clarification. So, Dan and then Tracy.
Thank you.
Pretty full, doesn't it?
To bring it to the theme of what this board's about, which is collaboration and the idea that if we work together, we
with empty seats behind him.
And I think the report probably underestimates the success of our approach to safeguarding, if anything. And there's the area I'd like to really pick up on is culture and insight. So I think we've recognised there's been a significant change in our approach to safeguarding over the last few years in terms of culture and insight. Examples of insight include things like understanding if a child's being exploited by a criminal gang, we see that more as a safeguarding issue than a criminalisation issue. Also, it wasn't that long ago that there was a lot more conflict between partners about who was responsible for what, and we've moved to a much stronger approach where we see it as a problem that we solve together and it's just the child is at the centre of it, and the involvement of young people that you can see throughout this is a strong indication of that. So I'd like to see a little bit more attention on the positive culture that we've developed in Norfolk. And the reason I think it's particularly important for this board is because if we can bring that into other areas where we're still not quite as far along as we want, for example in SEND, where there still is a little bit more conflict between partners sometimes about who's responsible for what, we could learn so much that would benefit
Passing the bucket.
in Norfolk. So I just want to make those points. Thank you.
But does that come down to money? Does that come down to money? Why they are doing that? Because they can't afford it, might not have enough staff. Why? Why?
Thank you. Did you want to respond at all?
I might come to you for a quote then for next year's report. Thank you.
That's fair enough.
Quotes.
Tracy, then Jonathan. Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely endorse the annual report, and actually really like the way that the children's version, the young person's version is written. I think I just wanted to think about the multi-agency safeguarding arrangement does state that we want to prioritise prevention, which is absolutely key for that early help. And actually, I think you've said in the report that builds on and enables us to understand and tackle inequalities if we do that at locality level, and also is predicated on that joined up working, a bit like the culture and the good relationship that Dan has just said. So just wondering what opportunities you perhaps see with the NHS 10-year plan as we move into a neighbourhood health approach to working, multi-agency wise, and if that affords any opportunities to support more early prevention and keeping our children and young people safe. So that's kind of one question. And then my second question, the data is absolutely fascinating and insightful. So just thinking, again, it indicates to me those health inequalities issues, that those more underserved young people and families. So is there, with those young people, insights gathered from a kind of more of a qualitative perspective about their experiences that goes alongside that? And I can see loads in the report, but just thinking more about those more underserved young people particularly.
Thanks, Tracy. Sarah wanted to come in first, and then obviously yourself.
Right, on that note,
I thought I'd help.
I'm going to have to come back to this because not only is it 3 hours long, but I think I'm going to have to do this in clumps because there's a few things I now need to research that was discussed. So that's it for now. I'll catch you later.